The laughter was cruel, cutting through the warm hum of the diner. At a corner booth, a group of teenagers pointed and snickered, their eyes fixed on the old man by the window. His clothes were worn, his beard untrimmed, and he held a single cup of water with both hands, as if it were the most precious thing in the world. He kept his gaze down, a lifetime of weathering such storms in his silence. But then the restaurant owner emerged from the kitchen. He didn't shout. He didn't point to the door. Instead, he walked slowly across the checkered floor and knelt right beside the old man's chair. Every town has a Charlie's Diner, the kind of place with vinyl booths that sigh when you sit down, a jukebox that plays classics from 50 years ago, and the smell of coffee and bacon that welcomes you like a hug. The heart of this place was its owner, Leo. He was a man in his late 50s, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners and hands that were permanently stained with flour and grill grease. He knew his customers by name, knew their orders by heart, and ran his diner not just as a business, but as a sanctuary. For the past few weeks, a new quiet presence had become part of the morning landscape. An old man, who the regulars had started calling Joseph, would come in just after dawn. He'd take the same window seat, the one where the morning sun painted a warm square on the table, and he'd order just a cup of hot water. He'd sit for an hour, sometimes two, watching the world wake up outside, cradling the ceramic mug in his weathered hands. He never asked for more. Leo had made it a policy, quietly told his staff, that the water was always free for Joseph. "A warm seat and a warm cup cost us nothing," he'd say, "but it might cost him everything to go without it." Joseph was a ghost of a man, speaking only in soft thank yous and gentle nods. His past was a mystery, folded into the layers of his old coat. On this particular Tuesday, the dynamic shifted. A group of 4 teenagers, loud and brash, had taken the booth behind Joseph. They were celebrating a football win, their energy bouncing off the walls. One of them, a boy named Mark with a smirk that seemed permanently etched on his face, noticed Joseph. He nudged his friend. "Check it out," he whispered, not quietly enough. "The free water guy is back. Bet he's scouting the place to see what he can steal." The comment sparked a wave of snickers. Another boy, trying to impress, said louder, "Hey, mister, need a menu, or can you not read?" The laughter grew louder, more pointed. Other customers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, eyes darting between their plates and the scene unfolding. Joseph seemed to shrink into himself. His shoulders hunched, his grip on the cup tightened until his knuckles were white. He didn't look up, but a faint flush of shame crept up his neck. He began to move, slowly, painfully, as if to gather himself and leave. The teenagers saw this as victory, their laughter peaking. It was a cruel, common conflict, a moment where kindness felt outmatched by thoughtless noise. And then Leo came out from the kitchen. He had heard the laughter from his grill. He wiped his hands on his apron, his usual cheerful expression replaced by something solemn and steady. He didn't march over. He walked with a purposeful calm that drew every eye in the diner. The laughter died down, replaced by a thick, expectant silence. Everyone thought they knew what would happen next. The owner would ask the disruptive kids to leave, or maybe he'd finally tell the old man he couldn't loiter anymore. But Leo did neither. He walked past the teenager's booth without a glance. He walked right up to Joseph's table, and then, in a move that shocked the entire room, Leo knelt down on one knee. He was now at eye level with the seated old man, who finally looked up, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. Leo placed a gentle hand on the table. His voice, when he spoke, was soft but carried in the silent room. "Joseph," he said, "I've been meaning to ask. My grandfather built these booths. He was a carpenter. But the legs on this one," Leo tapped the table leg gently, "they've always been a little wobbly.
You have the look of a man who knows his way around wood. Would you mind taking a look? I'd be happy to pay you for your time, and of course, your breakfast is on the house." A profound silence swallowed the diner. The teenager's smirks had vanished, replaced by open-mouthed shock. Joseph stared at Leo, his eyes misting over. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, in a voice rough with disuse and emotion, he said, I was a cabinet maker for 40 years. Leo smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "I had a feeling," he said softly. "A craftsman's hands, you can always tell." He stood up and offered his hand. Joseph, after a second's hesitation, took it. As Leo helped him up, he turned his head slightly, just enough to see the table of teenagers. He didn't glare, he didn't scowl. He simply looked at them, his expression one of profound disappointment, before turning back to Joseph. "Let's get you some eggs and toast first. You need strength for good work." He guided Joseph not to the kitchen, but to a larger, cleaner booth near the counter. He called out to his head waitress, "Marge, the usual for me, and double the bacon for my new foreman here." The teenagers sat frozen. The weight of what they had witnessed settled upon them. They saw not a homeless man, but a man being treated with dignity. They saw an authority figure choose compassion over confrontation, humility over pride. Mark, the ringleader, felt a hot wave of shame wash over him. He watched as Leo sat across from Joseph, listening intently as the old man began to speak, his voice growing stronger, about types of wood and joint finishes. The simple act of kneeling had transformed everything. It wasn't an act of pity, it was an act of recognition. It said, "I see you, not your circumstances, but you." One by one, the teenagers slunk out of the booth, leaving their half-eaten food and a too large tip on the table, their heads bowed. The resolution unfolded slowly, like a sunrise. Joseph ate a full meal that day, his first in a long time. True to his word, he looked at the booth leg. With Leo's tools, he fixed it in 10 minutes, his hands moving with a skill and certainty that belied his ragged appearance. Leo, true to his word, paid him, but it wasn't just money, it was an offer. "I have a shed out back. It's full of old furniture that needs mending. If you're willing, I could use the help. Steady work, fair wage." Joseph's tears finally fell then, quiet and cleansing. He wasn't being given charity, he was being given a chance. Word of what happened spread through the town, not as gossip, but as a quiet lesson. Customers who had once felt uneasy around Joseph now greeted him by name. He became a fixture, not in the window seat with water, but at a workbench in the back, restoring old chairs and tables, a sense of purpose straightening his spine. The teenagers, particularly Mark, started coming back too, not to cause trouble, but to eat. Once, when Joseph dropped a tray of tools, it was Mark who jumped up to help gather them. No words were exchanged, just a nod. That was the beginning of their own quiet redemption. Weeks later, the diner hosted a small gathering. Joseph, now clean-shaven and wearing clothes that fit, had restored the diner's antique jukebox to perfect working order. As the first song, his choice, a smooth Frank Sinatra track, began to play, Leo stood and raised his coffee cup. "To Joseph," he said simply, "for reminding us that every person has a story, and every story is worth listening to." The diner erupted in applause, not loud and raucous, but warm and sustained. Joseph smiled, a true, full smile that lit up his face. He was home. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't found in standing tall, but in kneeling down to lift someone else up. That single act of humility didn't just change Joseph's life, it changed the heart of an entire room. It was a lesson in grace, written not in words, but in a simple knee-to-the-floor gesture of respect. Share this story if you believe that true kindness has the power to rewrite stories.